Welcome to another edition of Cadence Fishing TV. Today we're at Woodland Lakes near Thirsk. We're here just for a pleasure fishing session really. We had a match here, a Winter League match here on Sunday, and all lakes on the venue were used because it was a big match. For the first time the pleasure lakes were used. Now today I've come to fish one of these pleasure lakes because I've never fished them before, just to see what we can get from them. By coincidence, of course, one of the reasons I'm on here is the winner came off this lake and he had 46 pounder skimmers, so potential is there. It's been very cold of late, in fact really cold. It was absolutely freezing on Sunday. We had a deluge of rain yesterday, so that's not made it great. And of course today, as the lakes are clearing, we've got bright sunshine and it's flat calm. Anyway, we're going to try a few different things and see what we can catch. Hopefully today we should be able to show you a few tips on how to make the best use of these conditions on a commercial, which are spread about all over the country. So let's see what happens. I've come on to one of the pleasure lakes called Cock Pheasant. It is solely left open for pleasure anglers and they don't hold matches on it. Like I said in the intro, the whole complex was taken up with the North East Winter League, so to give everybody a fighting chance they did put this in. So like I said, this is one of the reasons I've come on to here today, just to see what we can make from it. Hang on, I've just got a fish. And while I gently ship back in what feels like a skimmer, I'll give a general, my general thoughts on how to approach this. Yeah, just a nice little skimmer, which is a good sign if it comes in. I would imagine that's typical of what we're going to catch today, but we shall see. My approach today, and I'd recommend if you're thinking of doing a similar sort of thing, is we're going to feed 2 lines on the pole line. I'm going to feed one with ground bait and pinkies, and I'm going to put on another line, and they're both at 13 metres these, and I'm going to put another line, just a few micro pellets and a couple of expanders in, because hopefully we might be able to catch better fish on them later. And then further round I'm going to loose feed casters and maggots. I'm just going to use one rig on the pole line, and I've got a waggler set up, and just to feel my way in really. I'm not going to feed a lot because it is the middle of winter and I don't want to blow it before we start. So I've had a good plumb round, and it's pretty much 3 foot deep, but I've got, looking over to probably what would be 10 o'clock on my left hand side here, there's a little dip, 2 or 3 inches, a little bowl, and that's where I think I'm going to catch most of my fish today. There's definitely some fish moved onto that ground bait I've put in. Another small skimmer by the look of this. Nice little skimmer. Even though it's winter and we are in just a couple of weeks from Christmas, we still need to keep feeding regular. The fish are still active enough to be interested in feed. I'll just show you the sort of quantity I feed. I've got probably 6 or 8 up to 10 maggots or casters at a time. We keep them going in regular, and especially on my waggler line, because that keeps the fish moving about. I put them in probably every minute as we go, and if I do get a good response, I'll up that feed more quantity or more often. On the pole line, what I've done with that is I've just cupped in some neat ground bait, quite loose because it's only 3 foot deep. So I've just cupped in neat ground bait with a few pinkies. I'll do that as often as it takes really, and that's down to how the fish respond. I've had 2 skimmers in 2 puts and I've just missed a bite there, so they definitely moved on to it. You'll get a signal to feed again is when you're getting regular bites like we are doing now, and they sort of tail off. There you are, I've got another one. Just a small one this time. We're just fishing for bites, and then we'll gauge how it goes, because we've got 2 or 3 hours, I would say, of good conditions our way. As for being tight with the feed, on the pole line, what I've done is I've cupped in, if Chappie can just get a picture of the pole here, I've cupped in at that distance. This is 13 metres of pole, so I'm a good 2 foot from the end of the pole. And what I've done, if I was to drop my float in now, that's right on top of my feed. But what I tend to do is I'll cup in at that distance, and then I'll fish to the full length, and that's just over the ground bait, and it seems to work pretty well for me, rather than sitting the hook bait right on top of that ground bait. You do seem to get more positive and better bites when you're fishing around that little area where you put the ground bait in. Oh, that's how it's working today anyway, and that's pretty much how I approach most my matches. Right, it's a cold winter's day, so we're looking at presenting the bait as lightly as possible. We're looking for spotting really shy bites, so the float of choice today is this 4x14 tough eye float. And one of the reasons I use these is because we're surrounded by trees that don't have leaves on now. The light conditions change constantly through the day, and I've found, for me, the best way to combat this is these floats. And if I just show you this, they come with different coloured tops, if you can see that. So today yellow's been working great because I'm fishing just in shadows of the islands, but when a bit of a wind gets up, that becomes really hard to see. So it's quite just a simple case of you pull that out, pull the top out, and then you can put any colour you want in. Usually I tend to fish just yellow and black, because I can see those quite easily. So then you just change the top, and straight away you're up and fishing a different coloured top without having to change rigs all the time. So I'll just put that yellow tip back in, because that's what we're fishing with. Quite simply, they're just pushing, and you get them in all different sizes. So that's the float I use. And like the waggler, I'm fishing a real nice light line. In this case, it's 012, and I'm on the match team as a rig line, because it's very robust as well, is that line, and that's one of the reasons I use it for hook length, so it never lets me down. Just below the float, I have my first number 8 shot. I shot these with normal shot, and if you notice, it's just probably 1.5 inches below the float. I like to set that first shot, so when the base of the float rests on that, it's dead depth. So that will tell me, and tell you as well, that I'm fishing probably 1.5 inches on the deck just at the moment as it's set up. But you can quite simply move that up. You can move it up, set 6 inches up, 6 inches laying on the deck, and then all you got to do is slide it back down to that shot, and then you know you're dead depth again. So moving down, same thing again. I've got another number 8 there, and then I'm down to number 10 shot again for droppers, and in this case I've got 4. Same as the waggler, it's set so I can see bites on the drop. 6-inch hook length, and in this case I've got 010 to the same hook, the B911 F1 size 18. The reason I've got 010 on the pole line is because I've been putting micros in and pellets, and I'm having a go on pellet, there's a chance of us hooking a carp, and I want to give myself every chance of landing that. So although it's not something I normally do in matches, today, because we're pleasure fishing, I'm using a 6 to 8 elastic. It will mean you do bump the odd fish or two, but if I do hook that carp, it gives me a better chance of controlling it and getting it in, and I find it works really well when I'm pleasure fishing. The elastic I use is the Midi Ivies. It comes in, on this case, this one is 3 to 4, which is green. Then you've got your 4 to 6, which is a blue one, which is the one I tend to use most often when I'm match fishing. And then you've got your 6 to 8, and they also do an 8 to 10, which I use when I'm in bagging mode. I did first put in on a single red maggot, but that just got me a really tiny rud. So I'm fishing double red maggot on a size 18 fine wire hook. It's B911 F1. That's getting me the bites at the moment. I'm just going to have a drop in where I put the pellets, those few micros, just to see if I can get a fish on that line. And if I get a bite, I'll just try a pellet, see what that brings. Because we know I can get a bite on the line where I fed pinkies. The float's going under pretty much straight away. So we'll see what this one's like. Because we're fishing for skimmers, or that's what it seems like at the moment. It's important, especially this time of year, just to keep working your bait. Every now and again, we just lift the float slightly, lower it back down. And that movement can often attract the fish's attention, and he'll take your bait. At the moment I'm fishing probably 3 inches over depth in the on the swim where I am now, and this is my micro pellets and expander line. On the other one I'm fishing, on the other swim, just to the left of here, where I am now, I'll fish that dead depth. So I'm fishing that on a maggot, and I like to fish maggot when it's calm like this. I like to fish it dead depth because you pick up bites quicker on that method, in my opinion. But I'll keep having a go on this pellet from time to time, but not had a bite on it yet. But because we're pleasure fishing, like I've said before, there's no pressure. Oh, I did have a bite there. Things are looking up. There's no pressure to bag up. Just enjoy the day. I'm using the same rig for maggots and the pellet. And what I've got, expanders. As you can see, there's a couple of different sizes there. I've got some 4s and some 6s. The way I put them on, I go through the side of the hook like that, side of the pellet should I say, and just roll it round. So you've got the hook exposed, and that'll easily come off when you strike into a fish, so you're not going to bump fish because the hook point's masked. So let's see if we can't catch one on that. A few more casters on my waggler line. I don't know whether Chappie had that, but a very, very slight bite. And we've got a skimmer on the pellet. Only a small one. Small skimmer, but a nice weight builder nonetheless. Just caught that skimmer, so I'm going to fire some more casters over my waggler line. I must emphasise, you must keep that second line going. Got to keep feeding your lines, because if you stop getting bites on one line, you need that other one primed up and ready to go. What a lovely roach on a pellet. Wasn't expecting that on a pellet, but perfect, fin perfect. Gonna have a go back on the maggot line now. The bites were a bit slow on that pellet line, even though not a bad quality fish. Let's see what this one brings. And the bite was pretty instant on the maggot. And to be fair, I was expecting a smaller fish, but let's see what this one is. That's not bad, another roach, and that's what I would expect really to catch on the maggot early in the session. instant. A proper pleasure session. Another fish straight away on that maggot line. And they are starting to get a bit better. And that is quite often the case. Once you start getting into a session, regular feeding, and your fish start to improve in quality. So I'm just going to have a go on the waggler line now. And see if there's any waiting for me on there. Rod is the CR10 11-foot match 1, and I particularly like this rod for silvers on small commercial lakes like we've got today. It's quite shallow is the lake, so one of the reasons I do pick an 11-foot rod is I like to strike sideways. Now if you've ever fished shallow and used a longer rod, you'll know what I mean. You strike up and that float comes flying straight out of the water. Quite often you're ducking as it flies behind you. So the method for striking is usually sideways, and the shorter the rod you've got, the easier that is. Now I'm only fishing maximum 18 metres, maybe sometimes up to 20 in other situations. So this rod will easily get you that distance, and of course with it being short it's much more accurate. And those of you who use tip rods, short tip rods for method fishing to islands, will appreciate that fact. Now the number 1 has got a real soft actioned top section to it, and like all the Cadence rods, it's got a progressive action, which means that the further down the blank you go, the stronger that becomes. So you can quite comfortably use real light hook lengths on this rod because that tip is very forgiving. But should you hook something a little bigger, we haven't hooked one today, but if we get a carp, it'll quite easily handle those, and I've had them in matches before, and landed them on reel like tackle. The reel I'm using is the CS10 3000. It's really light reel. It's a magnesium body, and that's what makes it so light. Bearings are superb. It's got an absolutely brilliant drag, front drag, and it's absolutely ideal for float fishing, and I do use it in all my float fishing applications really. Absolutely spot on for the job. The reel is loaded with Maxima, and in this case today it's 012, which is round about 2 pound breaking strain. And I like Maxima for this sort of fishing, the waggler fishing, because it sinks pretty easily, and you can very easily flick it under the water. That's the action we use by dropping the rod under and a sharp upward movement. So that means if you are casting close to islands and things like that, you can sink the line pretty quickly without moving it away from the area that you want to be fishing at. So that's my reel line. Hook length this is my go-to hook length. I use this all the time, everywhere, in all different strengths. Today I'm using 08, and it's Silstar match team in 08. And as we talked about the rod previously, I can use 08 and be really confident that even with a quick strike, that sometimes you do react quickly to the sharp roach bites, the rod will cushion and you won't crack off on that. So I'll quite comfortably use 08, and have landed carp. In fact, I landed 2 big carp on this setup we've got today last week in the match I fished. So it's well up to the task. The float I'm using today is one of my favourite floats for this type of fishing in the shallow waters, particularly where roach are involved and skimmers, and it's the Drennan glow tip antenna, and you'll probably pick that up in some of the footage that Chappie's been shooting, that I like to have this float set so I can read bites on the drop. And if you look at the tip section, we've got black there, and then we've got it in increments of different colours, of in this case yellow, black, orange, black, and then yellow again. So as the float's gently sinking down, as it does, I can read bites. Sometimes it'll pop up, I'll see the black, and then sometimes it'll lift right out, and that indicates a bite on the drop when a fish has intercepted that bait. It's locked together with number 8 shot, and in this case I like to leave a gap, as you can see there. That enables the float to fall down on strike. Down the line I've got number 10 droppers. In this case 1, 2, 3 droppers, and then just below that I've got a 6-inch hook length, which is that OH match team, as we talked about earlier. And then attached to the bottom of that is a size 18 B911 F1 hook. And I'll just get you a packet and show you what them are so you can see. Those are the hooks I use, and I use them in size 16, 18 and 20, just depending on what baits I'm using. Generally 18 will do me a double maggot and a caster, single caster, 16 for double caster, and I use a 20 if I'm fishing double pinky or single maggot, and they're absolutely great hooks for that job. If we just go back to the float again, something I did forget to mention, but you might have spotted, you eagle-eyed people, the Drennan glow tip floats aren't loaded, so I do like a bit of loading on the float as it helps on casting and everything. So I like to set my rig up just with the shot I want on the line, and in this case it's half a dozen number 8s, and then I do have on this 4 number 10s. I've got the 3 droppers of your set as I showed you, and if you can see on there just below them number 8s is a smaller shot. That's a number 10 as well, in case I wanted to alter how I fish on the drop. Now what I do is I put that shot on, and then I load the float with lead wire, as you can see on there, and it's very easy to put on. It's really a nice soft wire. You just wrap it round and wrap it round until you think you've loaded it up as much as you want. Test it in the edge. If the float sinks, all you do is just quite simply, I'll just get my fingernail under that, you can just peel a bit off and just cut it off with your scissors, and that'll get that float sat exactly as you want it. So there's times when the wind gets up, I'll just peel it back and just nick a little bit off, and that float will sit up a bit higher. So that's a great tip, I think, anyway, and I use it all the time on shallow water waggler fishing. On the waggler line, we've got an island in front of me. In fact, the peg I'm sat on is directly opposite the end of the island. Because I'm not carp fishing today, I'm just targeting pretty much anything that swims. I'm casting to the edge of the island on the left-hand side, and I'm just keeping the float away from the shallow shelf that's around that island, because I don't think we're going to have roach and skimmers tight up to that island. In fact, I don't think there'll be anything tied up to the island at the moment. There's always that possibility, trying to throw close to an island, that you're going to catch in the branches and things like that. So that's another good reason to avoid fishing tight to the island with a waggler. Oh, and I've had a bite. Only a small fish. In fact, a very small fish. Small roach. I'll just have a go on a caster and see if that makes any difference. I don't know on the matches that I fish on here through the winter, caster always catches you better fish, better roach than the maggot. But they do take longer to come to it. We'll just keep the loose feed going in regular. Particularly with roach. They'll swim around looking for those casters dropping through the water. When the float hits the surface, it settles and it's slowly sinking down. That is those shot gently falling through the water. I can pick up on any fish that intercepts my bait as it's going through the water column. That's really beneficial. Quite often the bigger roach will pick it up on the drop. And of course, it's very easy to spot lift bites with that long sensitive antenna. There was a bite there. Something took that, or a line bite, but there was definitely an indication. That float's just settling nicely. And there you go. That took it on the drop. You could see that. The float started to disappear. And I've got a nice roach. And as I was just saying, the better roach, take it on the drop. Well, I'm just going to have another cast on the waggler, and I think then I'm going to go back on the pole, because the idea of today, as we said earlier, is just for me to work out best methods, best way of catching the fish, and at the moment the pole definitely is producing faster bites, and I'm not missing them. You tend on the waggler, especially with roach, is you'll miss quite a lot of bites this time of year because they don't really take that bait too positively. So the advantages you've got with the pole is you're in direct contact with the float above the heads, so it's a lot easier to hit those bites. Right, just before I'm about to go back on the pole, I've got another roach, it looks like, yeah, on the waggler, and a nice one too on the caster. A nice fish. But I'm still going to go back on the pole because I did have to wait a while for that fish. Although I'm going to go back on the pole, I'm going to keep feeding that waggler line, because throughout the session you're going to need to top up the pole line. The fish might move, so as long as you keep that waggler line primed, you've got an option of resting your pole line and of course enjoying catching that bonus fish on the waggler. One thing I will add is I've got the keep net in today, and I've noticed that I can actually see right down to the bottom of the keep net. This water has really cleared up. So what you will find quite often with the pole, especially in conditions like we've got today where we've got no ripple and that sun keeps coming out, is fish are going to back away from the pole. It doesn't matter whether you spray your pole white or whatever you do, they get to know there's something over their heads, so they can spook a bit. So that's always a good opportunity to rest that line and have another go on the waggler, because I've had days where I can catch all day long on a waggler and the lads on the pole struggle, and it's usually a day like it is today, flat calm conditions and bright. So always worth having that waggler set up. Time for a top up now. It seems to have gone quiet on the pole lines, so I'm just going to top up both lines at once. Few pinkies and a couple of red maggots on one line, and a few micros, and a couple of expanders on the other line, and of course that nice loose ground bait. And we'll see what that brings. Keep the casters going in on that waggler line. I'm just going to have a Couple of casts on the waggler line while those little 2 pots of feed settle. Little bite there, just small fish by the look of that. But I do like my waggler fishing. Try a bit further away from the island. Getting a few bites, but they must only be off small fish. And we've got one. Just a roach. Not too big. In fact, I was wrong again. Little skimmer. Back on the pole, I think. See what's waiting over that ground bait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different baits. Quite simple for this time of year. First of all, maggots. I've got red maggots today, but we do throw a few bronzes in and other ones just as a change of up bait. Pinkies for when it's really hard, and I do like to feed these at the beginning of the session, especially where skimmers are going to be present. Casters, one of my favourite baits. And then if the going does get good, got a few fishery micro pellets, and for the hook, just some expanders. 6mm and 4mm I tend to use, and it's generally 6mm that catches you the better stamp of fish. And so that's all you need. Ground bait. What I'm using today is betaine green. It's a real sweet ground bait, nice and fine, and I've got it mixed, if you look in there, with a bit of sweet fish meal black. It just darkens it off a bit and adds that bit of fish meal smell to it. The fish generally do love it here, and that's what we come armed with. Definitely worth a trip out. Do a bit of pleasure fishing during the winter when you can catch fish just like that. Well, the sun's dropping. It's starting to getting cold. I think I'm going to call this my last fish to end the session. A lovely winter skimmer. Well, I've had a cracking day. What a lovely net of silvers. Well worth coming out on the bank on a cold winter's day. I've learnt a few things, I hope you have, and thanks for watching.